Welcome one and all. It's time. I almost said once again, but it seems like it's been quite a while. Deadzone tournament report. Yep, that game does still exist. In recent months I've been mostly running Deadzone tournaments rather than playing in them. So, with that in mind, if you look at the description to this video, you'll see a link to the Facebook group for my next Deadzone tournament, which is taking place at the TSN Arena in the centre of Nottingham on the 6th of January, which is a Saturday. So if you can be in Nottingham on that day and you like a bit of Deadzone, why not get yourself a ticket to the hottest series of Deadzone tournaments this side of... need some kind of Deadzone reference. This side of the plague outbreak. That'll do. Code Orange 3 Mango Meltdown. Why not turn up? Anyway, on with this tournament. This is Core Karnage from Core, I think that's the name of the building, in Doncaster. And I think the plan is for it to be a small gaming venue. At the moment it's more like a room with gaming tables in, but it's a work in progress, I think. So, let's have a look at, you can see the table there set up for game 1. I'm going to tell you what's in my list. You will have noticed if we just briefly flick back to the video thumbnail, you'll see there's a Teraton there. And is that 2 Teratons you see there? Yes, it is. So 150 points of plague means, sadly, you probably can't afford 3 Teratons often. You can afford them, but it's not a very balanced list, and there will be times that you run into lists that Teratons are not particularly optimal against. There are things that Teratons look at on the battlefield and think, you know what, that is my lunch. There are perfect targets for Teratons, but then there are certain things that they look at and think, I would rather spend the whole game avoiding that model. And if your entire army is Teratons, and you face lists like that, you're going to struggle. So you do need to have a little bit of balance. So what else do I put in at 150 points other than 2 Teratons? There's a mortar. You've got to have a mortar in there, obviously, for softening up targets and getting to those hard to reach places. Maybe someone's standing in a tower that has a platform size that the Teraton can't access because it's too large. So you mortar them off. Then we've got 2 HMGs in the list because it's some more ranged support, the ability to pin more enemies, which make them ideal Teraton targets. And also synergizing with the HMGs, we have 5 Hellhounds, 5 Plague Doggos. So, they are very fast, they're decent fighters, but they prefer to chew on things that are already having a lie down after being pinned by an HMG or a mortar shot, ideally, to make them more effective. So 5 of those. So we've got 3 ranged units, 2 Teratons, 5 dogs, and the Plague General, who is mostly just going to hide and try not to get killed so I don't lose my extra command dice. And the Plague General can use the splat to turn slain enemies into zombies, which is just a nice little bonus ability. And it's also the cheapest leader, so that's the real reason for taking it. Now, the first game you can see here, as Mr. Orange Arrow is introduced into the action, is Patrol. So round 1, I'm up against the Rebs. You can actually see part of the Reb force up there in the top right hand corner. And in Patrol you have, of course, as you can see, a 1-point objective up there, a 2-point here, a 2-point there, and a 1-point down here. And the deployment, I think it's 3 that way and 4 that way, is it? Something like that. It's a bit of an L shape in the corners. So, this is my setup here. And you'll notice that one of my models has left the deployment area. I think this is the L shape here, so I think it's just 1 there. The Jankmaster arrow seems more golden today. Does it now? I have been tinkering with the arrow, actually. I was messing with the size earlier and trying to find perfect colour for it, just to give it a bit more attention, because it does a lot of hard work on this channel. So, one of my HMGs has already moved. That's because before the game I won the recon test and was able to move one of my models as a result of that before the game. I've got my mortar hiding right in the corner because it can reach the whole table, it doesn't need to see things. It's easier to hit them if you can see them, but if you can see them that means they can probably see you, so they'd be able to shoot back, and you don't want that. My general is also hiding down there in the corner. The dogs are just bunched in where they can best hide. We've got another HMG down here with a Teraton and the other Teraton under there. The Rebs, what do they have? Well, they've also got some teleporting turtles themselves. They've got a regular Reb Teraton, which has a flamer and a grenade launcher, which are both one-use ranged weapons. Other than that, it's very similar to the Plague Teraton. And there is a Teraton Shock Trooper, who is a little bit different, has an interesting gun, and is smaller, so it can fit into smaller areas. So a half cube, the Teraton Shock Trooper can fit into. So I like the Teraton Shock Trooper, I think it's a bit underrated. There are also several Rebel Troopers around the place. I think that is one there, and maybe that one, and that one. There is a sniper in there as well, which I think is this one here on the ground. And there is a Sphere Leader, which are the fish head people, and that has an AP2 gun, which would be a threat to my Teratons, of course, with AP, since they're the only things I've got that have any armour, so that's the best use for it. There is also a Grogan Desolator, I think is the right one. There are two different Grogans. One has a suppression weapon and the other one has an AP weapon, and this one has the AP version. And there is also a Rebel Sorak who has a blast weapon, and he's hiding down there. You can just see part of his head poking out. So, what is my strategy going up against the Rebs? Well, the fact they've got Teratons means that my Teratons are not going to have the teleportation supremacy that they would normally enjoy. So, we have to factor that in. But the Teraton Shock Trooper is not as good as a regular Teraton. It is good and it has a different role, but it's not as good if it was going directly up against Teratons. So I think I've got the slight edge on teleporting. I've got dogs who are very good against most of this stuff. If I can get dogs into Rebel Troopers or Snipers or Soraks, I think they'll have a good time, even the Rebel Leader. But you do have to watch out, because if the Rebs have the splat for the leader, then they can switch some of their stats around. So if they shoot on a 4, for example, and you charge into them, they could choose to then fight you back on 4 by using their splat. So you've got to watch out for that. And other than that, other than dogs hunting down the weak stuff and Teratons battling the Teratons, and also my HMGs are going to be very useful in this game for suppressing the enemy Teratons. I'm going to be saying Teraton a lot in this video, by the way. So, if you are suppressed as a Teraton, that means you can't do a long action, and teleporting is a long action, so it's going to drastically slow you down, more than it slows down any other kind of model. Most kinds of models, anyway. So teleporting models definitely don't want to be pinned. And if you're in a situation where you've pinned an enemy teleporting model and it's lying down on the ground, be aware that if you choose to go in and attack it, it will then stand up to fight you, or to defend itself, and should it survive, it would then be standing up, so it would be eligible to then teleport. So you've got to be careful when you kind of reinvigorate an enemy model if it's not activated yet by going into combat with it. Just a little side note, bit of a tactical tip there. So these are my command dice. So we've got extra activation, which is always good when you're going first, because you can shoot off with multiple units. Shoot dice as well, so you can fire multiple shots in the first round. And, oh, by the way, at my next tournament, I am outlawing the use of extra activation dice in the first activation of each round for both players. So that means that the first player will have to activate one model, and that's the end of their turn. The second player will then activate a model, and that's the end of their turn. And then when it gets back to the first player again, they would then be able to activate 2 models if they have one of these dice. So it just gives people a bit of a chance to do something, or to move out the way of potentially being overloaded with shots in the first turn. So as it is now, you can activate 2 models with one of these right at the start of the turn, and if you've got 2 shoot dice, you could fire off 4 shots before the enemy has even done anything, which I think is a bit much for Deadzone. So my tournament is seeking to fix that. Also got an extra dice and a splat, which is to bring a zombie up from an enemy corpse. Now, my HMG is getting into range to suppress a Teraton, and does just that. And you will notice that the Teraton has actually moved over there as well. That's because I mortared the cube and sent it flying as well. And I also mortared the cube with the shock trooper in, and lots of enemies lying down, but I haven't actually killed any of them yet. I've just knocked them all down, which is good because it means they're not teleporting and they're further away from me and further away from the objectives, but it also means that I've not killed them, so they're still alive and they can contribute to the game later. The mortar then hits the floor with its... maybe it's the second shot that hit the floor. I did have to shoot dice. The sphere leader for the Rebs jumps up into the tower, and it's got this nasty AP2 weapon, which it's going to shoot at my forces with, but I don't think it does anything. And then I send one dog over in this direction, because there's a 1 point objective there for me to get onto. So it's not just about killing things, you do need to score points as well. And if you think it's dangerous going into the enemy forces, and there's an open objective, why not head in that direction? There is another enemy inside this cube now as well. Which may... is that the sniper possibly? There's something in there anyway. Actually, it might be... oh yeah, there's the Grogan. And the Sorak is on the ground, so that might be the sniper that's in there with the leader. You can see a trooper down there as well. So the Grogan climbs up and unloads some shooting, but you can see I'm not being too whittled down by it. And I've sent a dog out into the 2 point objective. So once the enemy have activated some of their dangerous shooting models, that's when you can start moving out into the open a little bit. Not too crazy, because of course they are going to be able to shoot later in the game, and they might activate before you do. But you can relax a little bit, and once the enemy fighty models have been activated as well, or if you know for a fact they're out of range and they're not going to get you because they don't have move dice remaining, that's when you can start moving on to objectives when you know who can and can't reach you. So you don't want to thrust out of your position too early and then be counter-attacked. A common thing that you would see new players doing in Deadzone is just move a model straight forward onto an objective at the start of the game, it immediately gets shot and killed. And then they move another one on, and then that gets shot and killed. So you want to bide your time and wait for the right moment to go out into the open. You can see that I've got dogs as backup, just lurking, not able to reach the valuable objectives yet. And the Teraton Shock Trooper, I think, has gone under this building, but the camera didn't quite capture it, but he's down here somewhere. I teleport my fancy new Teraton model onto the 2 point objective, and I am holding good stuff. I've got the other Teraton up here, behind this vehicle. We determined that these are big enough to count as just a cube, so if you stand up there you'd be on the same height as this level here. So you'd be 1 cube off the ground if you stand on it, because it's just about almost the size of a cube. So I'm standing on both of the 2 point objectives, so I'm going to score some good points for that. But not a lot of kill points yet. So, into the enemy turn. Oh, by the way, since it's 150 points, then you have to reach 16 before the enemy to win. And if you both reach 16 on the same turn, it's a draw. And specifically for this tournament, the way it's scored is you get extra points the more turns in the game that you score in. So that's tournament points. So if you have a really quick game and completely table your opponent in the first 2 turns and didn't go on any of the objectives, you wouldn't get any extra points. So you have to play the scenario and try and sit on the objectives in as many turns as possible to get more points. You also get bonus points for killing the enemy leader. So the enemy sphere, who is under there, is a target. Now I've got 2 shoots and 2 splats, so I can create some zombies and do some extra shooting in this turn. My opponent has got some splats as well, so can switch stats around, which makes them a bit tougher to kill, because if they've got 1 good stat, they can turn that into their fight stat, for instance, if you charge into them. 2 shoot dice, always dangerous when there are snipers and such. There's the Grogan as well, which is quite good at shooting, and move dice. The sniper climbs up to the top of the tower now, and is going to start unleashing, and Sorak is in position up here, and one of my dogs has been sniped off, as you can see, and another dog has been sniped off. So 2 dogs go down there, so down to 3 dogs. The Grogan is aiming into this cube, but you can see my dog has attacked the enemy leader, and obviously didn't kill it because they're both in the cube, so they're just hanging out next to each other, staring into each other's eyes. My Teraton has been blasted by the Sorak, and it's not a damage weapon, it just blasts you and knocks you over, pins you. So my Teraton is pinned, so it's not as effective, but it was blasted onto the 2-point objective, which is kind of funny. And it means that now I can just stand up and stay on that objective. The enemy Teraton is still down there because that's my first target for my HMGs and my mortar probably. You want to get that pinned so it can't teleport around. So it's a good way to limit enemy teleportation if you've got ways to suppress them. The rebel troopers are not very effective really, but they're moving up into position, and if they get an open shot, like climbing up onto this car for example, they could shoot the Teraton from above and be quite dangerous. My HMG knocks down the Grogan, but doesn't do any wounds. The Plague HMG now, it used to be amazing at killing things because it shot on 5s, but now it's gone to 6s, which is definitely more fair because it's a 1 victory point model, and it shouldn't be just killing things left and right. It is there really to suppress them. It's a Plague Ghoul firing a machine gun wildly, and it's going to force you to hit the deck basically. That's kind of what it's going to represent for them. Got a dog onto the 1-point objective here. This is on the left side, by the way, so the dog that I moved down here last turn has just gone bloop, bloop, bloop into there. The Rebel Trooper does exactly what I said, which is jump on top of the car and then open shots the Teraton. I think he actually kills a dog first and then shoots the Teraton with a... Does he shoot him with a shoot dice, or does he just shoot the dog? Maybe he just shoots the dog, actually. My dog, one of my other dogs, should I say, I think it was over here somewhere, bounded across into this cube, which was, let me go back, it's that Rebel Trooper there. Where the arrow is pointing now. I've got a dog over here somewhere that goes jump, 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 jumps in there, eats him, and then I use my splat to turn his corpse into a zombie, which may be able to prove useful for me later. The Grogan goes into the cube that my dog was in and kills it to protect the leader. So I'm down to 1 dog now. And my mortar, what does it do this time? It knocks over the Teraton and it kills an enemy. Who was in that cube? Let's go back. Have we got a picture of who was in that cube? Somebody over here. It must have been this trooper. So that trooper is killed. And then I use my other splat to turn that into a zombie as well. So we've got 2 zombies up on the table. Yeah. And I've also knocked down the sniper in the tower, which may well have been with an HMG. Probably was. Then doesn't do much trying to shoot at these models over here, by the looks of it. And then they down the Teraton. Now, I think the Teraton was blasted off that objective and took 2 damage from some other form, some other kind of damage. And then this one, I feel like this one's been targeted as well, but maybe there wasn't a picture. I think this one was blasted off the objective, but was able to just walk straight back onto it. That's why there's a picture of him there. Now, the Teratons would like to be killing things, but when there are 2-point objectives to sit on and you don't feel like you're under threat of dying, then you might as well stay on them. The Teraton Shock Trooper, who is hiding under this building here, pops out to attack my doggo and does a wound, but doesn't kill it, which is good. And, oh, was that dog already wounded? It may well have been already wounded, because I think I just do wounds to the Shock Trooper, because my dog rolls really well. So yeah, that's 2 wounds on the Shock Trooper instead. My Teraton that was knocked down there, instead of going onto the 2-point objective, just stands up and climbs up there and punches the Rebel Trooper in the face and kills it. Because even though I would get more points for standing on the objective, the enemy trooper could just shoot me again, so it is a threat while it's alive, so just going to get rid of that. And here's how the battlefield is looking now. So there'll be a picture of the score sheet coming up in a minute as well in my little notebook, so you can keep track of that. The enemy have a shock trooper, Teraton shock trooper there who's wounded, a sniper who's down. Inside the tower there is the leader, who is a sphere with an AP weapon. There's a Grogan in there. There's a rebel trooper there. There's a Sorak with a blast weapon there, and a Teraton. The Teraton kills my downed zombie that I brought back over here. And yep, so at the end of round 2, I'm currently up 8 points to 4. And I think I'm going first again in this round because I finished activating first. So my priorities would be to pin the Teraton again, and to get one of my Teratons into the cube that has the enemy leader in it and try and kill it, because there's bonus points available for doing that, and it shuts them down as well. The Grogan's also in there, so it shuts down 2 models, and if they want to break away, I can try and punch them in the face as well. Other than that, I don't want to abandon all the objectives, and I'm running low on dogs, so I might have to start moving my HMGs out towards the objectives as well. I have got a zombie and a dog there, so I have got some expendable forces left, but not a lot. Next turn I've got move dice, which is good. The reason move dice are great for Teratons is because you already have the 3 cube teleport move, and it just lets you to get even greater distance. But not only that, let's have a look at this situation. So if I were to teleport onto the top of the tower and punch the sniper, I could then use a move dice to climb down onto this cube and then punch another model. So you get 2 fights for the price of 1 there with a move dice. So my enemy has lots of shooting, mostly shooting this round, and a little bit of movement. So I do put a Teraton onto the tower to fight the sniper, punch it in the face while it's pinned, so I've got a billion dice, but do nothing. I don't even wound it, so just an abysmal dice roll from the Teraton there. And then my other Teraton teleports into the tower middle of the structure with the enemy leader and the Grogan, but doesn't do much either. So not great from the Teraton. And then okay, this is an interesting situation. So the Sorak thought, this is an interesting setup you've got in there. I've got a weapon that does no damage, and this building has windows that the Teraton won't fit through. Therefore, if I blast into that cube, that's going to knock all of the Reb size 1 models out of the windows, but the Teraton is going to stay in there unless it gets knocked out in like this direction. So there's a high chance the Teraton will get stuck in there, and a high chance that the Reb models will be blasted out, and therefore not in the same cube as a Teraton, which is a very interesting strategy. But you can see that the leader ends up here, the Grogan falls down through this window, and the Teraton is just stuck in the cube still. So yeah, that's a good idea. Unless it's against the rules somehow, in which case I'm not aware of it. So there's the Grogan. And what else is going on here? So my HMG downs the Teraton again and does 2 wounds as well, so that's really good. So the enemy Teraton has not really been able to get into the game yet because it keeps getting suppressed. My Teraton is being open shot by the enemy as they just converge on this cube, look through the doorway and open shot it and do 3 wounds out of 4, so it's almost dead. Jankmaster says the Teraton seem pretty broken. I think they are very powerful. I think the Plague Teraton is probably too low in points. It should probably be more. I think it is incredibly good. I don't think spamming an entire list of them is good. I don't think you would want 4, for example, in a list, because they are limited in the places they can go with their size. And if you come up against, for example, an enemy walker, a big strider or something like that, or anything even tougher than they are, like an aberration, or what's the really big nameless creature called? Goliath. Come up against anything like that, the Teratons won't want anything to do with those, so you're going to be teleporting around just onto the objectives and hiding for most of the game. If you come up against Forge Fathers, and they've taken nothing but Steel Warriors are what Teratons make their soup out of, I think, because they have armor 1, which Teratons ignore, and they're smaller than a Teraton, and they're just a really tasty treat for Teratons. So they really like to fight things with armor 1 that are smaller than them. So if you come up against that kind of list, loads of Teratons is great. But yeah, overall I think they're too cheap. They should probably be a little bit more expensive, because things like Murder Birds and Bursters and Plague Swarms certainly have a role, but it's nowhere near as efficient as Teratons for the utility that they give you. So my mortar blasts the sphere leader off the roof, but doesn't do anything to it kill wise, and my Teraton is taking some shooting damage as well. So there is a wound on this Teraton. I don't, maybe that one already had a wound. But the enemy are lining up and blasting away at this pinned Teraton who's being open shot but not dying. And the shock trooper kills my zombie, which is very cruel. And I put my HMG, so as I said I was going to have to start moving them out onto the objectives. This one comes out and jumps onto the 2-point objective. So the Plague HMG carrying ghouls, what makes them special I think is the fact that they're speed 2-3. Most machine gun carrying troops in the game are slower than that, so the Plague ones do have that going for them. So they're as fast as a dog, they just aren't as good at fighting, because they don't have frenzy, but they do carry guns. So jumps down onto the 2-point objective, and I think that's the end of the turn there. So still not done enough to win yet, but you can see the mortar has moved up. That's because I had a move dice left over, and I thought, why not just move the mortar up here, and then I can just shoot something. Why not? Because I'm more likely to see it. Now, it does occur to me, can mortars move up a level? Can weapon teams go up onto the higher level? I suppose they're not vehicles, are they? Interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure on that, whether the mortar should be able to climb up onto the next level or not. I'll have to look into that. Because vehicles can't go up a level. But obviously the mortar's not a vehicle, it's just a weapons team. So you would think they would be able to climb up and carry that with them. So I don't know. And in the next round, activation dice, always good to see. Shoot dice, so the mortar can fire twice. Fight dice, good for Teratons. Movement, good for Teratons. You can see my leader is not coming out of this corner because she'll just get killed. And she can't contribute much, she's only got a rifle. The enemy have got some good shoot dice there and a bit of variety elsewhere. And up here, okay, so now it's suddenly looking quite good. Teratons are up and about, killing things. The one that was on the roof with the sniper chomps away, kills it, jumps down, kills the trooper that was in there. So Teraton scoring some good points. The other Teraton stands up and goes after the Grogan, but doesn't kill it, as you can see. And the Grogan, in fact, breaks away from it, climbs up onto the roof, and then unleashes its fury down onto the Teraton. Doesn't kill it at the first attempt, and doesn't kill it at the second attempt. So despite being from above with an open shot, does not kill the Teraton on its last wound. So, lucky escape there. Although you could say the Grogan was lucky to escape being attacked by a Teraton in the first place, and then successfully breaking away from one. My HMG then pins the enemy Teraton again, so it's just completely out of the game. So yeah, if you want to shut down Teratons, bring suppression weaponry or flamethrowers, so you can set fire to them so they might not be able to activate at all. Okay. Then... oh no, we've lost a dog. The Teraton Shock Trooper kills the doggo, and I've got no dogs left. Wow, wow, wow. So I've not given away many victory points from kills yet. The mortar then knocks down the Grogan off the tower, drops him onto this car, and my leader's just not doing anything. The Rebel Sorak moves on to the 1-point objective. My HMG is on the 2-point objective, and the enemy Teraton jumps onto the 2-point objective there, so they are going to score some points now. And that's the score at the moment. So I am currently sitting pretty on... so we've got 8, 10, 14, so I need 2 more points to win. My enemy has got 7 points, so needs another 9. So it's looking good for me to win in the next round. And I've got an activation dice and some fighty dice, looks good. My opponent's got lots of extra dice to add to a dice roll and some shoot dice. So it could be dangerous there at shooting me with the extra dice. And we finally got a Teraton battle. So my wounded Teraton thrusts itself into the enemy Teraton, and they just have a bit of an old scrap, and neither one of them get killed there. The enemy sphere leader takes a wound from, I don't know, maybe the mortar. Maybe I shoot it and it gets wounded, but then again it would be on its side if that was the case. So something targets it anyway. And I think this Teraton is down to its last wound, which is why there's a 1 dice next to it, by the way. Sphere Leader then pops up and kills my Teraton that had been wounded earlier and should have died ages ago. My HMG then knocks down whoever's under there, which I think might be the Teraton Shock Trooper, which killed the dog here and then just retreated again. My HMG moved from this objective, loop, loop, move 2, and then can still shoot because it's quite fast. And my mortar, which hasn't been hassled all game, finishes off the enemy leader, so we're going to get a bonus tournament point, which is great. Then the Grogan on the roof of the car, I think, gets shot a bit, but doesn't die. Enemy Sorak just sitting pretty on the 1-point objective. I'm not going to get to that. So there we go. End of the game. I'm holding 2 objectives there for a total of 3, and I've killed the leader. The enemy are holding this one, and the one with the 2 Teratons punching each other is contested. So 21-11 victory for the Plague in round 1. So I think the Rebs are a bit underpowered as a faction. I think the Plague Teratons are possibly too cheap. So I think overall it's a bad matchup for the Rebs. But in general, they did have tools to mitigate what I was bringing. They did have their own teleporting units, but the problem was I was able to shut them down with my HMGs. So if you get the opportunity, keep out of sight of suppression weaponry until you're ready to teleport, because you don't want to be suppressed with teleporting units. It's their nightmare. Okay, by the way, whoever's watching this, don't forget to like the video, you heathens. On to the next round. And this round is, the mission is Divide and Conquer. So you've set up in the center of the map, and I'm up against the rats, the vermin. So let's see. I think I could have set up things on here as well. I think it's this area here. So it's 4. Oh no, there we go. So 4 there, and these 2. So I've got my dog there, dog there, dog there, dog there. There's another one under the building. 2 HMGs. The reason they're here is because they want to climb into the tower. And they can climb into the tower as soon as they get to activate and then shoot down from there and get bonus dice for being at height. The Teratons are advanced because they want to spring onto the enemy early. And the mortar is just in whichever spot is least likely to be hit by the enemy. And it's actually got quite good lines of sight through this table as well. There are a lot of windows in the terrain, so it should actually get more likely to hit things. My leader is under here hiding, as you'd expect. You can see that Teraton there, the dog there, and the leader is just here. The leader looks kind of more exposed, but there is a solid wall beyond this building, which is around here somewhere. There's a bit of a solid wall. So there's still views through there, but it's more limited where the leader is standing here. The rats, so they've got a brood mother, who is very tough, kind of good fighting the enemy. There is a rumbler, which has a long-range flame weapon that can set cubes on fire, which is very scary. And I can't remember the names of all the rat units, but there are crawlers and stalkers. So I just refer to them as like knife rat and AP rat. So these 2 have got AP weapons. One of them's got ammo. This one's got a knife. He's good in combat. This one's your cruddy normal rat. There's a knife rat. And can you even see all the other rats? I think there's some underneath. There is one normal-sized rat who has a mine launcher as well. I think he might be the one that's worth 2 VPs. All the other rats that are normal-sized are worth 1, so they don't give away a lot. And the big stuff is obviously worth more. And there's a nightmare under there as well, which is the big rat that has 2 drills for hands, which is very scary in combat. So, what is a good target for a Teraton in this game? Well, there isn't a perfect target, because the things that you would want to hit and kill are the normal-sized rats. But they're mostly worth just 1 VP. So it's not the best to throw yourself into enemy lines to get 1 victory point and then be attacked by a nightmare or a brood mother. So it might not be the best game for the Teratons here. It might be one for the dogs to hunt down the rats. And the Teratons maybe deal with the rumbler, perhaps, which is quite large, but it is a weapon platform. So it's not particularly interested in fighting anything up close. So The objectives, by the way, in this mission are on the flanks. There's 2 points like here, and on the other side. Along the middle line, there are two 2-point objectives right at the edge, left and right. So, the first round, I've got some shoot dice, which is good for the mortar, and movement dice. My opponent with these just about legible command dice has got shooting and fighting as the main features there. So, Plague versus the Dirty Rat, divide and conquer. Let's go. Mortar. HMG, I get to fire them off before anything else happens, and I knock down and wound, I think it's the rat over there that got wounded, which is one of the shooty AP rats, and I also knocked down the broodmother with all that, and I've also knocked down the other shooty rat. So I've only actually done 1 wound, but I have knocked down lots of rats, which means that they're more limited in what they can do. They can't, for example, move into a good firing position. You can see a nice close-up of the back of my HMG that's climbed all the way up to the top of the tower to shoot down from a high vantage point and get extra dice. The Rumbler sets my Teraton on fire, and then it sets the Teraton in the building on fire. So both Teratons are on fire now. So they're going to have to do a flame test before they do anything. And it's tricky because a flame test doesn't have to actually damage you to stop you activating. It just has to win the roll. So if you have rules like tough and armor, it doesn't matter because the flames will still shut you down for the turn. Which is one of the things I think is overpowered in the game, is being on fire. And not that I think models shouldn't suffer when they're on fire. I think they should have some ill effects from that. I don't think all models should have their turn so easily shut down by being on fire. That's my argument. So I've got another HMG and the other layer of the tower, and that knocks down the knife rat. And okay, so you can see my opponent has started to lay mines with the mine launcher onto the objectives here, and these are on half cubes, so it has to be dogs that go after them really. And as soon as I step into that area, my opponent can then choose to set off the booby trap, which is not ideal for a dog. So both of these have traps on them, which means they're not really out of bounds exactly, but it would be very risky to go there, and I would rather wait for my opponent to be on them first, because that way if I move in, my opponent would be hesitant to set off the trap because it would hit both of us. And my opponent's model is going to be more valuable than a dog, probably. So it'll probably only set off the trap if I double up and get 2 dogs in there against 1. So I'm going to wait for my opponent to get onto these before I jump on them. And my HMG takes a wound from the shooty rat over there. And due to the fire, my Teraton fails to do anything, because he's too busy putting out the fire, hiding inside his crispy shell. And the Teraton under there, I can't remember if he suffers the same fate this turn, but he may well do. The Rumbler and the Broodmother are working their way up into a threatening position towards the 2-point objectives on the left-hand side. I think they find an intel token as well, so a free victory point. So this Teraton, who is down here, does not suffer the effects of the fire, and teleports out and ends up on the 2-point objective there and says, "Come and get me if you dare, enemy." And there's the Nightmare. So those are the 3 most horrifying enemy models all together. Particularly the Nightmare and the Broodmother in combat are quite scary. So I don't want to be throwing a Teraton in there. My dog just moves up here. I want to be ready to strike at the enemy when they're on these objectives. But I don't want to go up there yet because they'll just set the trap off and the dog will probably die. So, enemy rats moving up into position and taking shots, killing one of my dogs. And one of the rats seems to have a death wish because it's standing looking directly at a Teraton. Now the Teraton can't enter this cube because it's a half cube, but the Teraton can punch you from this cube. So it's still a danger. I put a second dog into this cube here, waiting, just biding their time. As soon as a rat lands on one of these, they're going to zoop in there and start nibbling on some rat flesh. My Teraton has taken a wound from some shooting. And we've got a rat on the objective, so next turn I'm going to be straight up there to nibble on it. It is a knife rat, so it's pretty good in combat, but I'm still going to go for it. And the situation as it is, the objectives are fairly evenly contested. I've got the edge on having a mortar. My opponent has the edge on being able to set me on fire with this, and it's well protected by these two powerful models here. But the issue with that is that they are not near the objectives particularly, and those are two models that would be difficult for me to get off the objectives. So while they're guarding this thing, then they're not getting their maximum use, I would say. It's arguable, though, that guarding this thing is a worthy job, because setting me on fire can prevent Teratons from activating, essentially. So the dirty rats are ahead, as a result of being on slightly more objectives and finding some intel, but it's still close. And in this turn, I've got a bit of a mixed bag of command dice, and so is my opponent. And what's going on now? Well, there's some shooting taking place. I've got a dog up into this cube here, and I throw a dog into the gun rat, which is, hold on, let's go back a second, the one here. I think it's this dog that goes bounce, bounce, bounce in there, hoping to kill it, but only does a wound, so it's still alive. My mortar then fires off and doesn't do a great deal by the looks of it. I think it just hits the nightmare actually and knocks it under this building, but I don't think he does any damage. A knife rat springs up with a move dice into my tower, right at the back in my setup, my deployment zone, and kills one of my HMGs. So that was kind of unexpected. Very long range charge from the rat. I throw a dog into the knife rat up on the objective, and nobody wounds each other, which is okay by me because I can throw in a second dog, and we'll see if my opponent sets off the booby trap when I do so. Because you can only set it off when an enemy model enters the cube. So if you don't do it then, you probably won't get to, and the dog's just going to sit there sniffing the booby trap and you can't set it off. So you have to do it when they enter the cube. So the gun rats end up killing off my dog. I think this one shoots from above actually and kills it. So it's not hindered by the fact that it's got a friend in the cube. Still manages to kill it despite that. And I throw my other dog into the cube. And my opponent chooses, this is the time I'm going to set off the trap. It explodes, blasts everybody, doesn't do any damage, blasts everybody into a solid wall, at which point they stay in this cube because they can't pass through a solid wall, so they would have gone like this way, where there's the edge of the battlefield, because this is one cube here, so you don't necessarily bounce and fall down a level. So they stay where they are, and yeah, they're all still in the cube, but they're all pinned now. And so they start standing up to fight each other, and another enemy rat comes in actually. This one, who's not a fighty rat by any means, he's got a gun, comes in, fights one of the dogs, but doesn't do much. So I've got a dog that's standing up now, so that's good. I kill my dog that was here, bounces onto the rat that was on the 2-point objective, turns it into a zombie with a splat, which is nice. So I've got two models in this cube now on the 2-pointer. My opponent then immediately sets that cube on fire. My HMG downs the gun rat and puts a wound on it, which is the one that shot down at my dog from above earlier. And my Teraton down here is on fire and takes damage from the flamethrower. So he's only got one wound left, which is very scary. And wounded gun rat, which is the one that was down here, I think, underneath this little mini tower, comes down here and shoots at my Teraton up on the left 2-point objective there and does some damage to it, one extra wound. And as soon as I activate the zombie or the dog, they've already activated this turn, but next turn when they activate, they might just die because there are flames in there. Then I decide, you know what, my wounded Teraton, who was, let's see, down here, this back here and to the right is where my tower is, where my HMGs are. Where my HMG was, one of them is still alive, the other one got killed by a knife rat that swarmed up there. So my Teraton, once it passes the fire test on its last wound, teleports up into the tower, which is here. So he was down here, teleports up and kills the knife rat. So that's good, got him cleared out, so my HMG is now safe for the time being. Then one of the rats breaks away from my dogs into this cube with a booby trap in it, but doesn't set it off, obviously, because you wouldn't choose to set it off on your own models unless there's a really bizarre tactical reason to do so. I can think of situations where you would want to do that, but you couldn't set it off on your own model anyway. You only have the opportunity when an enemy model enters the cube. So maybe you would still want to do it, even if you weren't trying to kill the enemy, if you wanted to blast yourself onto an objective, maybe, when the enemy comes in. Questionable tactics, but I think there is a situation where you would set it off intentionally to move your own troops around. Depending who it was, obviously. These basic rats are quite likely to get hurt by it. And there's the overview of the battlefield. So the objectives are quite contested, but I'm currently holding the ones on the left there. Which means I have stormed back in with a good round, scoring 6 in that round, my opponent with 4, so it's still very tight going into round 3. So I've got another mixed bag, bit of move, activation, fight and shoot. My opponent's got a very mixed bag, so fight, extra dice, splat, extra activation and shoot. The only thing that's missing there is a move dice. Okay, so let's see, my Teraton is no more. Look at that, there's a Teraton. Now there's no Teraton. I'm pretty sure it just got gunned down. The dogs and the rats over on this side are commencing their battle. And the rat actually comes back in to have a fight but doesn't do anything. My mortar then takes out a rat. I think it was off the top here. And the brood mother, I think this is, comes up here and tries to murder my dog. It kills the zombie, but the dog is still there. And one of my dogs kills off one of the rats on this side, so we've now got numbers supremacy on these objectives, which is good. The doggo is doing their work commendably. And the nightmare is coming out the window because it was blasted under this cube last time, so it's heading towards this direction, which would be very scary for the dogs. They don't want to have to deal with those giant drills. And my leader is just hiding under there doing nothing, just a picture to represent that, because you don't want your leader out in the open getting killed and depriving you of future command dice. And yeah, my dog takes fire damage when it activates, just 1 wound though, and then it just decides to sit there and not fight the broodmother because I want to be alive to contest this objective. My Teraton teleports down from the tower down here because it's on its last wound, and if it goes near the enemy again it may well get killed, and I don't want to just gift my opponent the win. So yeah, a quickly summed up turn there because we're running out of units. We've done a lot of killing, so in that round we get some more good scores in. So going to the 4th round, my opponent is on 15 points and needs 1 more point to win. I'm currently on 12 points, so I need 4 more points to win. If we both hit 16, it'll be a draw. So I need to get 4 points from somewhere. Where am I going to get 4 points? I've got activation dice, fight and splat. I could do with shoot and move dice, really. My opponent's got move and shoot mostly. So how am I going to get 4 points? Well, I could be on 2 of the 2-point objectives at the end, uncontested by the enemy, which is unlikely because there's a nightmare here. So we may have to write that one off. I could also be on 1 of them, which is very possible because I've got dogs on this one here, and kill something that's worth 2. So I could kill a nightmare, I could kill 2 basic rats, I could kill the broodmother. So it seems unlikely, but it's possible if this dog could break away onto the objective. So the mortar is set on fire, which is sad. And my HMG is gone from the tower now. That gets shot down as well. So my opponent is definitely going to win if I don't score 4 points now. However, I do kill the rat on there, meaning I'm on a 2-point objective. So I need 1 more point to make it a draw now, because I'm not going to be shifted from that. So what do? I try to get the dog away, I think, but it gets killed. So I need 1 more point. And here's my plan. So, because I think the nightmare moves away to do something else. I can't remember where it went. I think, oh yeah, it's chasing after my Teraton under the tower. So, this 2-point objective is now open, but it's got a booby trap on it. I need to move a dog onto the booby trap. The dog needs to survive the blast. The dog needs to be pushed by the blast in a direction that leaves it in this cube, and needs to survive bouncing off the wall. and that will give me another 2 points and the draw. So the dog gets killed by the booby trap. But that's not the end of it, because we've got the nightmare over here fighting my Teraton. I could still kill the nightmare and win, or get a draw, should I say. So my Teraton, I don't think, died when the nightmare came in. So the Teraton was then able to hit it back, but then didn't kill it, obviously. And then my last hope of anything was my leader to pop out and open shot the nightmare and get really lucky with maybe an 8 train, but no. So I had a few different ideas up my sleeve to get that last point I needed to turn it into a draw, but none of them worked out. So it's a loss, 15-23, but did a good job, scored victory points in several rounds from the objectives, and got a decent score because of that. So going into round 3, we are playing Pandemonium. So that's where you set up in different corners. You set up in the 2 opposite corners and your opponent is in opposite corners as well, with half their strike team. And the objectives, there are 4 in the middle and then 4 round the edge at intervals. So on one side I've got my mortar and a dog, and under there I think I've got my leader and a Teraton and a dog and an HMG on top of the tower. I'm against Forge Fathers, by the way, and I'll show you what they've got in a minute. You can see my leader under there and Teraton's arm. The Forge Fathers have got a Brocker, Steel Warrior, and they've got lots of Steel Warriors. So this is the Dream Teraton list. There's loads of Steel Warriors. They're paying points for that armour that the Teratons are going to ignore. They're all smaller than a Teraton. They're all fighting on 5s, which is worse than a Teraton. They are just delicious, chunky meals for Teratons to snack on, and they're worth more than 1 victory point, all of them. Brockers are less tasty because they're only 1 victory point, and they don't have armour, but that means the AP is no good against it. So Steel Warriors are the dream meal, and there's a Steel Warrior Huskarl, there's a couple of regular Steel Warriors, there's one with a magma gun, there's one with a machine gun, and there's one with a flamethrower. So let's see if we can munch on them. What do I expect to happen in this game? Well, Forge Fathers have got very good shooting, it's reliable. They're going to be able to shoot my dogs down. So they're going to kill me. They're going to get some kills early in the game, definitely, because I have to set up some of them out, kind of out in the open. But as soon as my Teratons get to the Steel Warriors, I'm just going to munch through them, is what I think will happen in this matchup on average. So really, you want to be trying to pin my Teratons with your Braccarim, the HMG wielding Steel Warrior. You can't see the Teratons, you've got to bide your time, wait for them to pop out, not leave yourself in striking distance of them, and then try and pin them later. Because if they get in, they are going to eat all these Steel Warriors for breakfast. So, on the other side, I'm hiding everything. I'm not putting anything on that side of a big wall here because I don't want to get pinned by the machine gun or hit by the magma gun or the flamethrower. I think the flamethrower is down here, actually. It might be in the building, maybe, or it might be him. So, Teraton, HMG, plenty of dogs there. And my opponent's got the leader down there. This might be the magma gun, which is the one that has AP. So a long-range, scary AP weapon. And yeah, I think that's the leader down there. So 4 objectives in the middle in a square. One there, one there, one there, and one there. Lots of objectives to get onto, but none of them are worth that much on their own. So you have to hit them en masse. Now remember, in this event, you score... The more rounds that you score points in from the scenario, the more tournament points you'll get from it. So, if you've got the opportunity to make it kind of a cagey game, where you just score a little bit each in each round, then maybe that's the way to go, rather than going full-on aggressive, trying to end it early, because obviously that's risky anyway. But also, you're giving up potentially scoring more tournament points by playing less turns. So, immediately, what's going to happen? Well, here's my dice, which is a good start, actually. Move dice are good for Teratons and dogs, and shoot dice good for mortars and HMGs. My opponent's got lots of shoot dice and activation, so I could lose models before I get to do anything here, because the Forge Fathers won the recon test. So, Steel Warrior to the edge of the building, shoots off a dog immediately. It was the one I had kind of in the open. Then the Braccarim HMG climbs up the tower, or it may have been up there already, and shoots off another dog and one of my HMGs, so I'm 3 models down before I've even activated yet. But, importantly, none of the Teratons have been touched. So my mortar, which was wounded as well from the shooting barrage, then fires off and knocks down the Braccarim on the roof. And knocks down the magma cannon, I think that one is. Knocks it off the edge, and I've done a wound to it as well, which is nice. And I've now put it in range of my Teraton to go and eat it. You'll see from the next angle. Flamethrower uses a move dice to get closer to me from the bottom right corner to set fire to this cube with a Teraton and a dog in it, which is really annoying. And he then pays for it by being attacked by one of my other dogs, who then wounds him. Steel Warrior up on the tower there finds some intel, so points for the Forge Fathers there. And so he climbs up there, finds intel. My Teraton then teleports from over here somewhere onto the magma cannon that was down, eats it because it was already wounded, so of course he's going to kill it. Then I use a move dice to climb up onto the next level and eat the Steel Warrior who was on the roof. So that Teraton has just eaten 2 models and got about 5 points for it. So yeah, very nice. This Teraton who's on fire, I think the dog tries to activate actually, and the fire just kills it. So down 3 dogs and an HMG. The Teraton then fails the fire test as well, but doesn't take damage, but he just can't activate this turn, so that's sad. And I throw another dog up there onto the roof and eat the Flamethrower Steel Warrior. So you can see, even though we've lost models, the enemy models are worth a lot more, and they're a considerable piece of the enemy force, and I'm just eating them as soon as I get to them. My leader is just hiding, as usual. My HMG climbs up and shoots at this Brocker, who'd moved onto the 1-point objective, and wounds it. And then pins the enemy leader, who'd climbed up to try and open shot the Teraton, but had failed. I think my opponent may have mistakenly been rolling on 4s to hit, though, and then the next turn I think realised it was actually 3s. So it may have wounded the Teraton, if he'd realised. I don't think I've ever used the Steel Warrior Huskarl. I normally like to take the Forge Lord or the Forge Guard Huskarl in my Forge Father lists. Or the Brocker leader. So, it's looking very good for me. It's close on points. It's currently 8-6, but the enemy are down 3 models, which is a significant part of their force. I still have my mortar, both my Teratons, and one of my HMGs. So, next turn, I've got no shoot dice, but I have got movement and activation and fighting, which is good. My opponent's only got 1 shoot dice, which is bad for them. Fight dice aren't really that useful because they don't want to be fighting me, so they may end up being used for rerolls. So the Huskarl stands up, tries to shoot the Teraton in the back again, and again does nothing. The Braccarim on the rooftop then stands up and shoots the dogs, kills one, and the other one is suppressed. So I'm down to my last dog. My Teraton over on this side, actually it was this Teraton here. So instead of turning around to fight the leader, he teleports down there onto the downed Brocker and finishes it off to get a point and to be onto the 1-point objective as well. This Brocker climbs up and kills the dog that was lying down. So I've lost all my dogs. The mortar then fires off and knocks down the Braccarim from the top of the tower and does a wound to it. Then the Steel Warrior jumps down and clear shots the mortar and does 2 wounds. So at this point, I am at the end of that round. I'm quite comfortable. There are not that many enemies left. There is a Brocker, a wounded Braccarim, and 1 Steel Warrior. I've got a Teraton on an objective. I've got a Teraton here. I've got an HMG. I've got the mortar and my leader. I can just win this game pretty much whenever I want, I think, at this point. I'm on 13 points. My opponent is on 10 points. 13 to 10. And we have to get to 16. So I need to get 3. I have more than enough models to put them on objectives. I'm on that one already. The HMG could walk onto this one. Teraton could get onto one of these. Game over. I win. However, the way this tournament's scored is the number of rounds that you score victory points in from the objectives that gets you extra tournament points. So I don't want the game to be over. But my opponent isn't that far behind, so it would be a risky manoeuvre trying to draw the game out by a turn. So what I can do is limit what my opponent can score and score just enough so that I'll definitely win in the turn after. It is risky because if I lose a model unexpectedly to an 8 train, suddenly it could be good night. But I'm going to go for it. I'm going to try and drag the game to an extra turn. I'm going to try to reach turn 4. So, I've got move dice and shoot dice. My opponent's got fight dice, and that's not much use to him right now. And the leader is dead, by the way. And I can't remember who killed the enemy leader. It may well have been the mortar. So that's why there's only 3 dice now. So at the end of that round, because not much happens, and yeah, just go straight to the notebook. So my opponent, does he kill the mortar? He might kill the mortar and score an objective point. So that's where the points come from, and I'm on one objective with the Teraton. I'm intentionally not attacking the enemy because I want another turn. So my opponent is now on 14. I'm on 14, but I'm in the prime position to win still because of the setup of the models. So I've got activation, shoot, fight, extra dice. My opponent's got some activation dice, which aren't much use. So I can still mostly win when I want, and I'm going to deny my opponent getting 2 points. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to get the Teraton onto this cube and fight the Steel Warrior, do a wound. The Braccarim then decides, I'm going to just pin this whole cube. Comes over, pins them, doesn't kill the Teraton, thankfully, that would have ruined my whole plan. And then they stand up and have a fight. The Teraton is taking 1 wound. And then the Teraton punches the Steel Warrior when it tries to break away. So killed the Steel Warrior, got the objective. And I only needed 2 points, so I was going to get that anyway, because I've got a Teraton up here on an objective. And I've got this guy, I've got my HMG on an objective there who was safe from the Brocker, who doesn't want to leave his objectives to go and fight me because he would then not score. We've got Jinx in the chat. Changing the stats with the Red Leader Splat can only be done on an active model. Right, so I don't know if it's a beta rule or something. That might be something that they can do now. I don't know if it was just played wrong. I don't know if it was something specific for this tournament, but it is something that I've heard discussion on. So I don't think it's necessarily illegal in the context of this tournament. I think it's something that's been looked at. So I'm not sure. I'd have to check, because there are some beta rules out now, like the Forge Fathers. There's the new Brocker. There's the new Forge Guard Huskarl rules. I don't know if it's something like that. I don't know if it's something that was just legal for this tournament, but I've heard something to do with the splats that affect models and when you can apply them. There's some kind of talk about that, so I'll keep my ear to the ground and feed back anything I hear about that. It's something I've heard chatter on, though. But as it stands in the rules, I think you are correct to bring that up, but I think it's okay in the context of this event. Okay, so win for the Plague. Killed some more models, sat on some more objectives, and we're good. So the enemy, obviously I was cutting it a bit fine here, letting the enemy get so close to 16, and it was a risk, because if the enemy get an 8 train and kill the Teraton, suddenly it turns into a draw. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to take the risk, because I've already lost 1 game. I want to maximise my score, so I'm going to try and get an extra round out of it. Because I could have just ended it either at the end of turn 3 or 2, probably. But trying to get a higher score allows the enemy to get more points as well. But gets me more tournament points for scoring in more rounds. And I also killed the enemy leader, which is good points as well. Now, that's a 3-game tournament. And where do we finish? This is a sneak preview of a bonus game that happened after the tournament, by the way. So what happened as a result of the tournament? Bum bum bum. It's a first place trophy, which is, I'm going to assume, 3D printed robot creature of some kind, which is painted gold as a trophy. There you go. So first place. And I'm not going to brag about this event too much because it wasn't very big. There weren't many players there. But still, first place is first place, and it goes on the trophy shelf. And this is going into my tournament wins playlist, definitely. Got to take the wins where you can. And also I got the Invincible, the dice game prize as well by Mantic. So, very nice. Now, finally, at this venue, there is an extra large Deadzone table. It's all cubed up and everything, but it's just larger. And we thought, after some people had gone home, there are 4 of us in the building, why not have just a big 4-way battle royal, basically, on this table? So we put our forces in there, and I come up with a bit of a mission for us. So in the centre, we've got this area. If you have any models inside this zone that's marked with a 4, you get 4 victory points at the end of a turn. Doesn't matter if you're contesting it, if anyone's contesting it with you, if you're pinned, if you're wounded. As long as you've got a model in one of these 4 areas, that gets you 4. It doesn't double up, like you wouldn't get 8 if you're in 2 of them. Just if you have anyone inside this middle area, because you're so brave going right to the middle of the battlefield, you get 4 points. If you're in this outer square, which is around the edge of this middle, then you get 2 points if you've got any models in that. So it encourages you to move to the centre where the fighting is going to happen. And the forces are the Plague, which I've got set up in this corner, the Rats, which I faced in one of the games, which are set up in that corner, the Forge Fathers, which I faced in another game in that corner, and in this corner we have a faction that I don't think I've ever faced, the Matsudan faction, which has marionettes in it as well and a shield generator. So it's just a bit of a fun game after the tournament finished, just a little bit of bonus content. So let's have a look what happens. So, my plan for this mission, because it's such a big mess, kind of, is not to go just throw things out willy-nilly. Hold back things like the Teratons till near the end of the turn. If you land right in the middle, everyone's just going to shoot you. So hold them back. Start mortaring if I can see multiple enemy units in one cube. Maybe mortaring if there are enemy units fighting different enemy units from different factions. Mortar both of them, that could be fun. And let's just see how it goes. So, first thing, the Matsudans go straight for me and knock down some of my dogs, which isn't very friendly. And the Brocker and the Rats are going at it already over that area, and one of the Rats gets killed instantly. So, and then the Rats are going for me next. They pop out and get eaten by a dog. Yay. So more dead Rats. Those are the shooty Rats as well that are both dead. The Broodmother then comes in and kills the dog. So, dead dog. Night Haunter 666. Boo. Yay. Oh, I assume you're booing the death of a rat and yaying the death of a dog. How villainous of you. So my HMG finds some ammo and shoots. Does he shoot anyone down? I might shoot down. I think there's a marionette in there that I killed. My dog bounces out into the 2-point scoring zone and is probably going to be the victim of some gunfire. Now you can see one of the marionettes has come out here as well. One of my Teratons is set on fire, as you'd expect, because it's a Teraton. I think it's set, yeah, the Rumbler did it from over there, because obviously Teratons are a big threat. The Matsudan are kind of amassing in this area here. There is a Brocker and a Steel Warrior with a big weapon up in this cube, which means that 2 models in a cube, something could potentially go after them. And now we've got a dog and a knife rat having a brawl on the roof in the 4-point scoring zone, which is fun. My Teraton refuses to do anything because it was on fire, so it had to just put out the flames like, I'm on fire, it hurts. Then I throw my other Teraton onto the roof to kill the rat that was fighting my dog. Like, hey, you think you can pick on my little friend? Nope. Punch in the face. Dead rat. So I'm in the 4-point scoring zone now, and I've got 2 dogs into the 2-point zone. You can see that the Nightmare has come into the 2-point scoring zone as well, and I think the rats had someone under here as well. I'm not sure if it's still there. So the rats and the plague are the ones that seem to be getting in most into the scoring area so far. The Forge Father is obviously slower, so it's not surprising they're not there yet. And look at that, it's a gloved hand. It was getting a bit chilly in there. And you can see the Matsudan. One of them's heading off up towards the Forge Father's encampment, and the others are all amassing here, ready to strike at the centre. The Forge Father's now raining down fire onto the Matsudan from above, and killing one of them. Obviously they're not finished the paintwork on them yet. The Nightmare goes after 2 Forge Fathers in 1 cube, and kills one of them. I think it's the magma cannon, but there's still a Brocker in there. Then 2 of my dogs are set on fire, which is obviously very nice indeed. And my dog and Teraton are set on fire as well by the Rumbler, obviously. Mortar. Who gets mortared? Well, I mortared the cube that has the Nightmare and the Brocker in it. The Brocker gets killed by the blast. The Nightmare just gets blasted in through the window and lands on the desk in front of this Steel Warrior. The Steel Warrior then tries to swat the rat on his table with the end of his gun, but does nothing to it, which means that the Nightmare is now standing up in the cube with him, which is not what you want when you're in your office, really, at your terminal. You don't want a giant drill-wielding rat being blasted in through the window and landing right in front of you. It's not the dream of anyone. We have got the Matsudan swording around the place, killing dogs, not very friendly, and the Brocker has come down from this side towards the rat encampment, and I think has killed a rat. Yes. In the middle I've still got some good plague representation in there, but I decided to teleport and attack the Rumbler with the Teraton and do nothing. So very disappointing, but I think I killed a rat first. I think there was a rat in there as well. So, next up, the Matsudan are encroaching into plague territory now and knocking down my HMG. And they're getting close to the mortar, which is obviously scary, and my leader is hiding at the back here. But these things are really tough. You can't pin them, you see. So HMGs are no good here. And one of them gets killed as a result of that invasion. The Nightmare kills the Steel Warrior, whose party he very rudely interrupted by being blasted through the window. And we've got a Knife Rat that jumps up onto the roof and kills the dog that was up there now that his Teraton babysitter's gone. So, 3 dogs down. And then another Teraton comes in and kills the Knife Rat. So, yeah, that's what happens when you mess with the plague. You tangle with the plague, you get a Teraton fist to the face. So, lots of dead rats. The rats are really suffering the brunt of the punishment in this game so far, but they are scoring as well. So the Nightmare gets knocked down by the Steel Warrior Brackerim. And dogs on fire as usual. A couple of wounds done to the Matsudan there by shooting it with an open shot from above with the HMG, but not enough to kill it. And the Forge Fathers piling out of their zone, but they're not really making a beeline for the centre where the big points are. Maybe they don't want to get involved in this kind of fight. So they shoot over the balcony. And the player in question actually rolled a dice to see whether he should shoot the Rumbler or the Teraton, and decided to shoot the Teraton, did 2 wounds. And one of my dogs charges over and eats the marionette that was sitting on the outer circle of the scoring area, but one of the marionettes has jumped up onto the roof, which means that it's going to score 4 points by being there. Matsudan and Forge Fathers and Veermin all in the same close proximity there. And end of that round. So the plague, if we were playing under strict tournament conditions at 150 points, which we obviously aren't playing under those strict conditions, then the game would have ended here, because the plague have got past 16 and the rats have also reached 16. So the game would have ended there, but we decided, you know what, there's a big brawl in progress, let's play one more round and see how it shakes out. So we've got Nightmare on Forge Father action with a gloved hand of doom doing some killing there. The Teraton gets shot down by the Forge Fathers again. So they're doing the rats a favour there. Teraton is dead. The other Teraton comes in to take its place to punch the Rumbler, but is equally ineffective. Mortar gets knocked down. Steel Warrior fighting a Marionette and kills it into the big scoring area, and then kills my dog by shooting it from above. So 4 dogs, all dogs down actually, all of them. The Matsudan versus the Nightmare, that's going to be a good fight, but not much happens there, sadly. The Broodmother jumps up onto the objective. The Rumbler backs away from the Teraton. And this Teraton is taking mass damage now. Look at that, 3 wounds, and a Brocker climbs up onto a bit of an advertising board to shoot at it. My leader hides in the corner and shoots down I think it was a Marionette that got killed, a bit of an easy target. And that was how the game ended. So it ended up, I think that at the end of the extra turn, the highest points was the Rats, I think. They got quite a few kills and were on most of the objectives at the end. So, nice bit of fun, and I could see that being a kind of fun scenario, and maybe on a slightly smaller table, I think. Slightly smaller grid, and maybe 100 points aside, 4-way. I think that could be a fun way to play Deadzone. Obviously, not in a competitive tournament setting, because you can get weird situations where you know who's in the lead at the tournament or who's likely to win, so everyone teams up on them. So multi-person games in tournaments, not really that viable, but just for a bit of fun. That was definitely a fun game, and got to kick lots of butt. After, of course, finishing first at Core Karnage. So, how many Deadzone first place awards do I have on my shelf now? Let's have a look, shall we? I'm just going to turn around and have a quick count. Let's see. Standing up, because there's so many of them. By my count, that is 4 Deadzone first place awards. You heard right. 4. And how many second place awards have I got? One second place award. And I also have a third place award up there as well. So generally with Deadzone, if I'm going to finish towards the top of the table, it's going to be a first place. I've got a best terrain award up there as well, which is nice. But yes, adding to my Deadzone win collection, adding to the tournament wins playlist, which is always a treat for people that watch that playlist just because they want to relive moments of glory on this channel. And you got a fun bonus game at the end of it as well. So, what do I think about the Plague? Well, as I said earlier, I think Teratons are undercosted. Plague Teratons, I think they're too cheap. I consider them an auto-include. I think I'd be doing myself a disservice if I don't take 2 of them in a list at any point level, which should tell you that they're probably too cheap. At 200 points, I would find a way sometimes to fit 3 in. Not always, but minimum 2. Definitely 2 Teratons at any point level is good. Obviously, if you start getting below 100, then it is a bit of a weird game anyway, and you probably can't fit that much stuff in there. But 150 or above, I think 2 Teratons minimum. Dogs, I think, are amazing as well. They're fast, fighting with frenzy, and just overall a very good unit. The Plague Ghouls have come down in points recently, so they're not bad at all. And of course they can shoot, and they have some other perks, but I still like the dogs for that frenzy ability. The Mortar and the HMGs I think are really, really amazing. As you saw in the game against the Rebs, being able to pin, suppress enemy teleporting units or anything that was a big threat was very useful, and the Mortar just always performs well. Always does it a good job. I have run plague lists with 2 mortars in the past. Sometimes it can be overkill, sometimes it can be pointless if you come up against a faction where none of the stuff can be scattered or pinned. Then you've wasted a lot of points doing that. So it does encourage you to make a balanced force if you're going to an event, because you don't know what you're going to face. So the most balanced plague lists that I've taken, I think, still have 2 Teratons in. So 2 Teratons, a few dogs, a mortar, a plague swarm, And for extra balance, you probably want more shooting units as well. So 1 HMG, maybe a ghoul or 2, possibly a leaper, maybe could come into a balanced plague list. Because they're still pretty good. They're a more expensive troop choice than a dog, basically, which is their only issue. And the dogs are really good. But, so with the dogs, while being good, it's 1 victory point giving away 1 victory point for 7 points spent on the list, which is actually not a great ratio. So if you look at the Teraton, for example, which is, I think, is it 24 or 26 points, something like that? That gives away 3 points. So per point in your list, you're getting better value at denying your opponent points by taking things like Teratons or Leapers. I think Leapers are 2 victory points, but they cost 16 points, so that's 8 points per victory point, whereas dogs are 7 points per victory point. So you're actually giving your opponent an efficient way to score victory points. So I think dogs are quite balanced in that way. They do give away points when they die, and they will die, but they also do a good job fighting. So I think that's a good spot for them. I think they're quite balanced. I think Teratons should go up a little bit in points. I want them to be in a situation where I have to think twice about automatically putting 2. That's the first thing I put in the list, is just 2 Teratons. So I want to be in a situation where I build a list first, and then I decide, would Teratons complement this force at their cost, or would I be better off with Plague Swarms or Murder Birds? Because at the moment, I don't have that conversation. So I think Teratons need a tweak. I know it's not the right thing to do, to come onto a live broadcast and start telling people to nerf your own faction. That's probably not the done thing, but I do think it's necessary. And there we go. I think it's about time to wrap this video up then. So 2 live streams in 1 weekend. I'm definitely spoiling you, so you should definitely be not only liking and subscribing and joining all my social media stuff like the Facebook group, Twitter, there's the Discord server and all that good stuff as well. You should also be pledging all your life savings via Patreon or PayPal, obviously, so that I can continue to head out to multiple tournaments, sometimes multiple tournaments in a single weekend, as this was. Spent my entire weekend being up and about, getting up early, travelling to events, travelling back, and then live streaming immediately afterwards. So I don't mind not having a weekend, essentially, because I get to do all that fun stuff. But to be able to afford all that, obviously, the audience have to give me all their money. That came off very aggressive, didn't it? Let's see, Night Haunter. Sharpens nerf back to a razor sharp edge. Yes, there may well be someone in here with the power to nerf Teratons, or at least to nudge in that direction. So maybe I shouldn't be speaking up too loudly about this. There are other things in the game I want to see nerfed, which I've talked about at length before, including it burns as a rule. I think it should be easier for certain units to mitigate the effects of being on fire. I think that's very powerful at the moment. I think stun grenades are extremely powerful. Too powerful. I don't even think they should exist, which is why stun grenades are banned from my tournament. By the way, my tournament is linked in the description for this video. It's coming up on the 6th of January at the TSN Arena in the centre of Nottingham, and it's 175 points. It's got an interesting new scoring system, which you can read about in that link as well. Tickets are available there. There'll be cakes available, and by available I mean included in the ticket price, so you don't have to pay any extra for the cakes that I bring along. There may be some biscuits as well, maybe like gingerbread men or something like that. That would be nice, wouldn't it? And yeah, the last 2 have been very good events. This one is continuing the trend of Code Orange. Lots of prizes. I'm looking at the pile of prizes right now, actually. Some of those have come in from Mantic, and I've also thrown a couple of things in there myself as well. There are a couple of more edible things I need to buy for the event as well, which may also become prizes. So check out that link. And apart from that, what have I got coming up next? Let's have a look at my tournament calendar so I can keep you up to date on that. Okay. in my notebook here, the next event that I have in the calendar is an Age of Sigmar event on the 30th of December, which is a one-dayer, which is very rare for Age of Sigmar. You don't get a lot of one-day events for that. So I haven't decided what I'm taking yet, but obviously that's after Christmas. And then immediately after that, the next weekend is Code Orange 3, my tournament, tickets available. And then after that, I've got a big gap in the calendar, which I'm looking to fill with events, because there's nothing else until July and September. So I need to start signing up for more events that are coming up at the start of the new year. So let me know if you know of any events going on. As far as game systems, Deadzone, Kings of War, Age of Sigmar, anything else you think I might be interested in based on my gaming history, let me know. You never know, I might turn up to an event for an unfamiliar system. Wouldn't that be wild? And that's about it. So, all the good social media stuff, do all of it. Follow everything, give me all your money, like the video and all that nonsense. And all that remains to be said is, good night out there. Whatever you are.